All right, what's going on, everyone? So we've got a quick Iran war update here, and unfortunately, we have to start out with some bad news that just came in a few moments ago, that 10 more American service members have been wounded in Iranian drone and missile attacks, this one in Saudi Arabia earlier today. The Wall Street Journal reported, quote, 10 American service members were wounded in an Iranian attack at the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on Friday, according to multiple U.S. and Arab officials, adding that 2 of the service members are considered seriously wounded. They added that they were inside of a building on the base that was struck in the attack, noting that the attack damaged multiple U.S. refueling aircraft and at least 1 missile struck the base, as well as several unmanned aerial vehicles. So just to kind of dive into that, we're talking about multiple Iranian munitions getting through U.S. and possibly Saudi air defenses to strike home on a sensitive target, right? Not only do we have our personnel there in harm's way, no doubt, but we've got some satellite imagery coming out that appears to show that a number, 2, 3, 4, maybe KC-135 refueling aircraft were damaged, if not destroyed. Now, this isn't perfect. This is Chinese satellite imagery, but looking at some, what I would say, reliable open source intelligence accounts, they do seem to confirm that there were fires burning inside the perimeter of the Prince Sultan Air Base earlier today. And this is maddening. I'm going to crash out over some of this stuff. It is so frustrating to see things that we have had an eye on for 4+ years in Ukraine and that we just aren't paying attention to. And it's costing us equipment, maybe lives of our personnel. What are we doing parking aircraft open on the tarmac inside of the enemy drone and missile range? What are we doing here? Like, we have made, on this channel, have made fun of the Russians that don't learn that lesson and lose aircraft after aircraft after aircraft, and their own channels just complain and moan about how they can't find overhead cover. They can't even put a net up. Look at what we're doing. Are you kidding me? 4 years we didn't learn a single lesson? Those aircraft cannot be parked out there in the open like that. They are so incredibly vulnerable. And it's equipment, and hopefully in this case, the only thing that was lost was equipment, and hopefully the service members that were wounded all make a recovery. But like, we had the opportunity to watch this playing out. There's no guesswork involved here. We're 4 weeks into this conflict. Iran continues to sling drone and missiles at American bases throughout the region every single day, and we are still parking aircraft out in the open, able to be hit with a cheap $20,000 drone. I don't know what hit that aircraft right there. Clearly something detonated, and it doesn't take a ballistic missile to destroy or significantly damage and take out of operation for weeks, months, maybe years, a U.S. aircraft. What are we doing? This is ridiculous. The lessons are right there for us to learn. We have to take them. I hope, and I'm getting more and more nervous the longer this conflict goes on and the more footage that we're seeing of aircraft parked out on the tarmac. No excuse. Hey, hardened structures are hard to build. Got it. Not all of our aircraft will fit inside of them. Fine. Something temporary even helps. So, I mean, if nothing else, make it to where they can't see the aircraft parked on the tarmac when they get ready to launch that munition. They could be using satellite imagery that's 24 or 48 hours old and know exactly where they need to program that Shahed drone to impact. No excuse. Put up camo nets. Put up anything. Try to obscure the aircraft we have on that tarmac even just a little bit. These are sitting ducks. And on top of this, just a couple days ago, we saw FPV drones flying through the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, through Camp Liberty, just hitting whatever they wanted. On top of this, Hezbollah yesterday just released their first footage of an FPV drone striking an Israeli tank. Now, it's not clear how much damage that did, and the pilots no doubt are still learning. They're a little bit wobbly in a lot of ways. Come on. We know our adversaries have these capabilities. It is ridiculous that we are watching them successfully carry out some of these attacks when we knew that this is exactly what they would be trying to do. Now, to that end, Iran still has a significant number of drones and missiles remaining. You know, pick a number. However many you think they need to continue to carry out some sort of terror attacks across the region. It's not a lot. But according to some new reports in Reuters, they say the United States can only determine with certainty that it has destroyed about 1/3 of Iran's vast missile arsenal as the U.S.-Israeli war in the country nears its 1-month mark. They say the status of around another third is less clear, but bombings likely damaged, destroyed, or buried those missiles in underground tunnels and bunkers. One source says part of the problem is determining how many Iranian missiles were stockpiled in underground bunkers before the war started. I'm nervous with the assessments that we make of enemy munitions. We've never been very good at that, or at least in recent years, right? Russia, we've talked about this recently, but I think it was a month into the conflict, the Russian invasion into Ukraine, and reliable outlets were saying Russia is on the verge of running out of their missiles. Last night, Russia fired more missiles into Ukraine, 4 years in. Now, it's a little bit apples to oranges because Russia is very much still producing those weapon systems. But one of the challenges in Iran is they have these underground facilities. We don't know exactly how many they produce. We don't know exactly where all of those missiles are. And in some of the cases, it looks like we've been trying to cave in some of the entrances to these underground facilities. Look, yes, that helps. That moves us in the right direction. We should not and cannot assume that Iran has a deep underground bunker that they have been preparing for. They built that to go to war with the United States and Israel, all right? There's not like some other entity that they're waiting to go to war. So they are watching what we are capable of doing and trying to defend against that. So these underground facilities, do you think that they have one entrance or two entrances or maybe multiple ingress and egress routes just in the event that one bomb closes an entrance, right? So we can do that, but we don't know how many of those are closed off. We don't know how many missiles still remain underground. Now, the strikes are continuing in both directions, and I'm trying to highlight the Iranian attacks they're getting through because that is costing us equipment. It's costing us the lives and the well-being of our service members that are downrange. I think that is critically important to highlight. We aren't getting a ton of information about U.S. and Israeli strike. Well, aren't getting a ton of information about U.S. strikes in country. Israel actually continues to share a significant amount. Earlier today, Israel announced that, or through a couple different releases, the Times of Israel, I should say, said the Israeli Air Force bombed two of Iran's largest steel factories, according to Iranian media and Israeli security sources, as well as two facilities linked to Iran's nuclear program in moves that sparked vows of retaliation from Tehran. They say the strikes on the plants, which an Israeli security source briefing reporters said were partially owned by the IRGC, were expected to cause billions of dollars in damage to the Iranian economy, as well as paralyze Iran's steel industry. This is some of the kind of long-term damage to Iran that the United States generally has not been pursuing, but we have seen Israel go after a number of facilities like this, energy facilities, oil and gas facilities. As they get to, in this article, they say, Donald Trump has indicated earlier in the week that energy sites would not be hit for the time being, as Washington has sought to avoid turning Iran into a failed state. And this is the Times of Israel reporting. Keep that in mind. They say, while Jerusalem has indicated such a result is still preferable to the current regime's continued rule. And of course, we've had notes in recent days from senior Israeli officials that they are really going to push the pedal to the metal in the coming days because they believe that there is a possibility the United States might broker a ceasefire with Iran. I don't think that's in the cards. There's all sorts of conflicting statements coming out, but there is zero indication right now that we are actually close to some sort of ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The United States and Israel are still hitting targets with regularity inside of Iran. And of course, today, Iran is striking U.S. bases, causing U.S. casualties. To this end, the Iranian foreign minister, in response to those steel facilities being hit, said, quote, Israel has hit two of Iran's largest steel factories, a power plant, and civilian nuclear sites, among other infrastructure. Israel claims it acted in coordination with the United States. The attack contradicts President Trump's extended deadline for diplomacy. Iran will exact a heavy price for these Israeli crimes. I don't have a lot of confidence that the talks are even happening. I have a feeling that people might be talking right past one another, a lot of the demands being laid out. So what the United States has laid out, well, I would like to see that accomplished. And if we could push a button and we're there, sign me up. There's no indication that Iran is ready to sign on to that right now. Rather, maximalist demands is probably a good way to put it. Iran, too, has issued what I would argue are maximalist demands. Not just that the United States repays for any damage caused during this war, but one of them is that the United States leaves the region entirely, hands over all of their bases to the countries that they're currently operating in. I don't think that's probably in the cards anytime soon. Now, President Trump or some of his advisors might want to do that, But if we right now, this week, even this month, all of a sudden started withdrawing all of our forces from the Middle East, it would be very hard to call that anything other than a defeat at the hands of the Iranians. So no doubt, for at least the near term, withdrawing from bases in the Middle East probably isn't in the cards. So what we're seeing in these negotiations are two hard lines being drawn on each side, very little wiggle room in the middle. One of the things that is still kind of up the sleeve and we're waiting to see, it's a wild card in a sense, are the Houthis. And news was going around today that the Houthis were about to make an announcement. In fact, their military spokesperson, Yahya Saree, haven't heard from him in a while. The last time he spoke up was, I think, in December. The last time he gave a press conference, and it was during a missile attack they carried out, or they tried to carry out into Israel. They all of a sudden said, we've got an announcement coming, big announcement by the Yemeni Houthis. And the reason this is significant, pull a map up here real quick, is the Houthis have the ability, talk about a wild card here, we've got the Persian Gulf up here to the north, the Strait of Hormuz is what Iran has effectively shut down right now. If we zoom out just a little bit, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is down here off the coast of Yemen. So this is the area where the Houthis were able to exact their influence in the last couple of years. Look how narrow this strip is right here. So trying to move from the Red Sea into the Gulf of Aden, very, very narrow. Most of this is Houthi controlled along the coastline, or at least inland just a little ways, certainly Sana'a. So they were able to strike a couple commercial vessels, go after U.S. military vessels for a while, a lot of back and forth in this region. They haven't entered the fight. They haven't fired any missiles at Saudi Arabia. They haven't fired any drones or missiles at Israel, and they have not tried to impede commercial shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. That is the thing that a lot of people are waiting for, because if that happens, you've got not only the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf shut down, but now this secondary route is shut down. Saudi Arabia is still able to export a bit. They have pipelines running west, and they are able to move still a little bit of oil out through the Red Sea. If this shuts down, you're talking about, by and large, this entire Middle East region effectively shut off from commercial shipping. It's going to take a while. Again, you're talking about folks having to go all the way around Africa to try to reach some of these areas. All right? The Houthis are a major wild card in this scenario. They haven't done anything yet. Just a few hours ago, they released a statement. People were on pins and needles thinking this might be it. But no, they kind of just said, we maybe will join if we decide to join. They laid out a couple terms here. They said, our fingers are on the trigger for direct military intervention if any of the following situations play out. The joining of a coalition to the United States and Israel against Iran. So if another country joins in the U.S. and Israeli attacks against Iran, in that case, the Houthis would intervene. Notable because we have seen some reports in recent days that maybe the UAE, maybe some Gulf countries are going to participate in helping to open the Strait of Hormuz. This Houthi claims, or this Houthi threat seems to be addressing that. The second is the use of the Red Sea to carry out any hostile actions by the United States and Israel against Iran or any Muslim country. So maybe, if we're reading a lot into this, military vessels transiting the Red Sea, but there's been no indication yet that the Houthis have gone after any military vessels since the last round of fighting ended with Operation Rough Rider. And the last one is continued escalation against Iran and the axis of resistance. That's pretty vague. I feel like that's one that could play in their favor. They could just say that is increased aggression. It is not increased aggression. Earlier today, the Iranian foreign minister said strikes on steel factories was increased aggression. Doesn't look like that's how the Houthis interpreted it, but either way, they're kind of leaving that open. And I do want to stress the Houthis closing down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait while the Strait of Hormuz is closed would exact a degree of pressure on the United States and Israel that we have not yet felt in this conflict. I'm a little bit surprised the Houthis haven't chimed in at all quite yet, but that is certainly an area of this fight that we need to keep an eye on. Now, for those interested, we just stood up a Substack within the last couple days, week maybe. I think the platform's great. It's really useful. And what we're doing is we're consolidating content over there. So long form, short form, interviews, we've got clips, we've got daily research, links to articles, podcasts, things like that, all of it in one place along with a community chat that's actually starting to go now. So community members can add to the chat, and they're all kind of discussing these topics back and forth. I like it. I think it's been a good platform already, and looking forward to continuing to post over there. So if you're on Substack, consider checking us out. If you're not, think about looking on Substack. There's actually a lot of really good creators, quality platform, I would say, at this point. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.